And good morning. It's 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. on the West Coast. I'm Christine Romans. Let's get you current. Breaking right now, surprise job loss. The U.S. economy shed 23,000 jobs in July. What it means for you. A $500 million fine for Meta after a jury found the company didn't do enough to protect kids on Facebook and Instagram. What the penalty could mean for the social media giant. Also breaking this morning, Todd Blanche's path to attorney general just got more complicated. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski saying she's a no. The new reaction on Capitol Hill. Plus, a deepening crisis in Puerto Rico where people are rationing water. Americans going without water for days at a time. We're live on the island. All right, good to be with you this busy Friday, August 7th. A lot of news to get to this morning. Let's begin with breaking news this hour. A gut check on the health of the American labor market this morning. The U.S. economy lost 23,000 jobs in the month of July, and the unemployment rate ticked down to 4.1%. But for the wrong reason. The number reflects Americans leaving the labor force. While this spells trouble for Main Street, Wall Street having a better reaction. All three major averages are pointing a little bit higher, and the Dow is up 101 points right now. Joining us now, NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung. Okay, Brian, you're at the big board. Break it down. We did see some hiring in healthcare, but otherwise a lackluster month.
Yeah, that was a bright spot in this report, which quite frankly just fell short of estimates. Let's rehash the numbers. 23,000 jobs were lost in the month of July. That was the first contraction we had seen in the labor force since February, when the government reported that we lost over 150,000 in just that 1 month. And again, you can see the slowdown. Things looked good in the spring. We really slowed down, and now we're losing jobs. When it comes to the unemployment rate, it did tick down to 4.1%. That's not necessarily for good reasons. We can unpack that a little bit later. But when we take a look at wages versus inflation, this is what a lot of people were looking at, especially with the concerns about affordability in this country. Wages coming in at 3.2% on a yearly basis. The problem is the last read on inflation was 3.5%. So we are now back in the dynamic where inflation is eroding wages. If we take a look at the breakdown by category, we don't have it in this updated number quite right here. But as you point out, leisure and hospitality did add jobs. We saw a number of other sectors losing jobs. This is going to be a focus as we get into the other parts of this month as well. Yeah, and those revisions as well. I want to bring in Heather Long, chief economist for Navy Federal Credit Union. Heather, thanks for weighing in on this with us. You heard Brian talk about the wages versus inflation. That essentially means a family's buying power isn't going as far.
Exactly. And that's the number that many Americans are focused on right now. This is a real financial squeeze. And I'd point out 3.2% wage growth is the lowest in 5 years. So the wage growth is moving down. At the same time, inflation is heating back up again. We'll get that latest read next week, but it's probably going to be close to 4% again. And you don't have to be a PhD in economics to feel that squeeze.
Heather, when we talk about that squeeze and that gap between high earners and lower earners, this K-shaped economy, the Treasury Secretary is saying the K is dead. Listen.
I got sick of hearing about this K-shaped economy. I can say here definitively the K-shaped economy is over, and we're seeing more of a C economy where the lower end of wage earners are finally calling it back, just like they did in President Trump's first term.
What do you make of those comments, especially in light of what we saw today from this jobs report?
Well, I think what he's reflecting on is the past several months when many Americans did receive those bigger tax refunds, and that gave a little bit of extra cushion as the high gas prices and other costs continued to erode budgets. But the problem for the White House is the picture now and going forward is more bleak. And that there's going to be belt tightening we certainly see in our data for many lower income Americans, they already are belt tightening. They're relying on personal loans and credit cards more. What does look more stable is the middle class. So I know we love our letters here. I'd call it more of an E-shaped economy right now where the middle is hanging in there, but it's very frustrating going forward.
Heather, you heard Brian talk about that 4.1% unemployment rate. That looks pretty darn good, 4.1%. But there's a caveat there. People appear to be leaving the job market. Do we know what's happening there?
It's pretty shocking, Christine. Over 2 million people have left the labor force since November. It's just been like a straight line down. Some of that is baby boomers retiring. A lot of the story appears to be lower immigration. We know that people are not coming to this country right now, given the immigration situation and the White House policies. You also have a lot of people who were on that temporary protected status who could legally work here from Haiti and Venezuela and other countries. The White House is revoking a lot of that, and we are starting to dramatically see that in the jobs numbers. But what really worries me is that many Americans are also just becoming discouraged. As Brian was saying, healthcare is pretty much the only industry hiring. If you work in something other than healthcare or AI, it's really tough. It's almost like a job market on life support right now.
I want to bring Brian back in here because there's more breaking news to talk to you about. A landmark verdict against Meta for not protecting children enough on Instagram and Facebook. Meta was ordered to pay $567 million. That's on top of a big penalty it had already received in this New Mexico story. Bring us up to speed on this.
Yeah, that would bring the total that Meta would have to pay here to almost $1 billion. Meta does say they're going to appeal this, but this is a New Mexico court that argues that, the New Mexico AG had argued to the court that Meta didn't do enough to protect specifically young children from getting addicted and developing mental health issues on Instagram as well as Facebook, and then also not being protected enough from sexual exploitation on these platforms. Now, Meta, I should point out, is facing a number of other legal challenges as well. They're about to gear up for what could be the first of 29 states that are suing them. That is going to begin in a federal court in Oakland later on this month. And they're also, all of these states, alleging that they didn't do enough to protect specifically younger children from developing mental health issues after we already saw that Los Angeles court just earlier in the year award one single person $6 million from both Meta and YouTube for not being properly protected and for developing some of these mental health issues. So I think it has brought up a general question of what is the liability for these social media platforms, because it's not just Meta. You have YouTube, Snapchat facing these types of lawsuits as well. I think a lot of parents are very much dialed into this very big issue.
All right, and you'll be following it for us, Brian Chung and Heather. Thank you so much, Heather Long. Nice to see both of you. Big day. All right, more breaking news on Capitol Hill this morning. Todd Blanche's nomination for Attorney General is in jeopardy. New this morning, Senator Lisa Murkowski says she's joining fellow Republican Susan Collins in opposing him. That's despite her, quote, numerous constructive meetings with Blanche, making the math even tighter for his confirmation. These developments happening as senators gather for a very rare Friday session on Capitol Hill today. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us now. More on Murkowski in a moment. But, Ryan, you have new reporting for us on another key Republican senator.
Yeah, that's right. Keep in mind, Christine, that with Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins both saying that they're going to vote no, Todd Blanche cannot afford any more no votes among Republicans. And there's been one name that we've been consistently asking questions of, and that is Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who has been very tight-lipped about his vote. He has said that he's been undecided from the very beginning. Cassidy had a meeting with Blanche a couple of days ago in his hideaway here on Capitol Hill. And in just the last few minutes, Cassidy has revealed that he will announce his decision on the Blanche nomination during a floor speech here at the Capitol at 10:40. So in about 35 minutes or so, Cassidy will reveal if he is a yes or a no on Todd Blanche. And Cassidy is an interesting figure in all of this. Keep in mind that he lost a primary just a couple of months ago where Donald Trump went and handpicked a candidate to run against him. This was after Cassidy voted to impeach him and convict him during his second impeachment proceeding in the wake of January 6th. But Cassidy had been working to get back into favor with the MAGA movement and was part of a group that voted to confirm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. As the next Secretary of Health and Human Services, this despite real reservations that Cassidy had about his nomination. We'll see if this time around Cassidy bucks the White House. We're going to find out the answer here in the next 30 minutes or so.
Right now, if you could take us through Murkowski and what we're hearing from the White House.
Yeah, Murkowski's really wrestled with this vote from the very beginning, but usually she comes around and sticks with her party when it comes to something like this. But she just decided that the Blanche nomination was just too much for her. She didn't think that he'd be enough of an independent voice. And this comes after President Trump conducted an interview with Punchbowl News where he really went after Senator Murkowski. Listen to what he had to say.
Murkowski, I was against.
Yeah.
I'm against Murkowski. I think I do more for Alaska than any president in history. No president's done for Alaska what I've done. She's not good.
And the one other name that I should mention, Christine, which could open a whole other can of worms, is Mitch McConnell. He's been absent, obviously, for the last couple of months. His team announced that he's out of a rehab facility. If he were to come and vote, that could change the dynamics as well. We don't have enough time to get into all of that, but safe to say we're waiting to see what Bill Cassidy does here in the hour.
All right, Ryan Nobles, thanks. We know you'll bring it to us when it happens. President Trump tries again to curb birthright citizenship after being denied by the Supreme Court. The president signed 2 executive orders yesterday. One limits the number of people who are eligible for birthright citizenship. The other cracks down on people coming to the U.S. To give birth, which the White House calls birth tourism. It was just weeks ago that the Supreme Court rejected the president's first effort to limit birthright citizenship. Joining us now, NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Garrett Haake. Hey, Garrett, how do these new orders differ from the president's first try to curb birthright citizenship?
Well, Christine, they're much narrower. The categories of people who might not qualify are folks like foreign diplomats and foreign diplomatic staff who arguably didn't qualify anyway, and people who are, children who are born to people who are here who are found to be part of terrorist groups, for example, something that I don't think would get a ton of pushback. There's another provision in here that would bar children who are born in U.S. territories from getting U.S. citizenship, but that's something that Congress is going to have to address. I mean, I think that a large part of the point of this is to change the subject politically to something that the administration is much more comfortable fighting about than either of the last 2 topics we've been discussing on this broadcast.
Yeah. Practically, how would the administration enforce these orders?
Yeah, on the question of birth tourism, the idea of people coming to the U.S. specifically to give birth, the administration says they might deny visas to pregnant women who they suspect are coming here for that reason. But how you would prove something like that, how you would defend it in court, I think is very much an open question. The bottom line here, Christine, is I think all of this is likely to end up challenged by lawsuits very quickly and potentially back in front of the Supreme Court, which, of course, threw out the president's broader order just about a month ago.
Already there's opposition from the ACLU, other groups as well. So you expect we will see another legal showdown over this?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge here from a legal perspective, and I am not an attorney, is finding someone with proper standing to file that lawsuit. But be it, elected Democrats or groups like LULAC, which is the largest Hispanic civil rights organization in the country, the statements came fast and furious that folks think this is illegal. They think it has racial connotations to it, and they don't expect it will stand. But again, the administration is probably okay with that to a certain extent. If they're going to have a fight on their hands, even a fight they're going to lose, they'd rather us be talking about immigration than almost any other issue.
All right, Garrett Haake. Thanks so much, Garrett. We're also hearing from President Trump about his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth. In an exclusive phone interview with NBC News, the president stood by Hegseth, who has led the Pentagon for a year and a half now. He said, in part, quote, "I think he's actually one of my best, smart guy, respected by the military." The Washington Post reported this week President Trump demanded answers from Hegseth on shortages of U.S. munitions. According to the Post, that includes shortages of long-range guided missiles and air defense interceptors. NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons is in the region. And Keir, Secretary Hegseth has been a critical part of the strategy in Iran. If he were to go, how much would that change the path going forward? And it sounds like the president is sticking by him.
Yeah, it sounds like he does. I'm not sure how much it would change the path going forward. I think the facts remain that the Iranians are looking at an agreement between Iran and Oman over the Strait of Hormuz to try and get these waterways back open more. And what Iranian state media is suggesting is that that agreement includes things like charges or fees or some kind of payment for vessels passing through the strait, even that it includes no permission for the US or Israeli ships to pass through the strait. That will be controversial, of course. Now, we should caveat that with that, of course, when you hear things from Iran, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true, but it does illustrate the challenge looking ahead now because, of course, the region, Iran's neighbors, and the White House clearly wants to try to get past this and kind of get past these stages of escalation. But if those reports are true from Iran, that they're having to accept some pretty bitter pills in order to do that. I will just give you a little piece of news. A spokesperson for the National Security Commission in Iran is saying the general framework of the agreement with Oman has been specified, and soon the final text and details will also be announced. What soon means, I don't know, hours, days. We've been waiting now for days, Christine, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. And it's been talking or not talking, or deal close, maybe deal not close. That's been a week now we've been saying this. Look, the president yesterday, Keir, acknowledged the supply of U.S. munitions is getting tight. Here's what he told reporters in the Oval Office.
We need more all the time. We have certain types of munitions that are very powerful, that we have unlimited, virtual unlimited supply. We have others where it's a little bit tighter, and we're getting them in on a daily basis.
How big of a concern is this for the war with Iran and future conflicts?
Oh, for sure it's a concern, not least, to take it from another perspective, America's allies and partners in this region are very worried about their capability to intercept missiles and drones from Iran. That's not to say they can't intercept them. They've done, actually, frankly, a pretty impressive job. But it only takes one to get through in order for there to be a real challenge, a real issue here. And I think that's one of the reasons why you saw the leaders from this region contact President Trump last weekend, as he said himself, to say to him, listen, don't escalate. Get back into these negotiations. President Trump framed it as that there's a deal on the table as a potential. I think there was also real worries in this region. I will tell you just quickly that Pakistan and Turkey's leaders are in Saudi Arabia right now signing a new defense pact with Saudi Arabia. That's another example of how things are shifting as these countries look for new ways to defend themselves.
All right, Keir Simmons in Doha. Thank you, Keir. Turning to the latest in those two foodborne illnesses sickening tens of thousands of people across the country, cases of cyclospora and salmonella are now in nearly every state. And now U.S. food safety officials are turning their focus to Mexico, where more than half of our imported vegetables are grown. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson. Ann, you've been following this so closely since it started. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is that we are still waiting to hear from the distributor, a company called Coast Citrus Distributors in California, about whether it has agreed to this recall. The FDA says it has, of those tainted jalapeno peppers. But in the meantime, there are all kinds of questions about who is responsible for keeping our imported food safe, and why didn't it work this time in these two instances?
This morning, those devastating foodborne illnesses now affecting almost every state in the nation are having a very real impact on many businesses. The popular salad chain Sweetgreen, not linked to the outbreak, slashing its business outlook based upon reduced consumer demand for fresh prepared foods due to the multi-state outbreak of cyclosporiasis. This just the latest ripple effect of dual salmonella and cyclospora outbreaks. Cyclospora, which was initially tied to iceberg lettuce sold at Taco Bell, has been reported in 47 states. The more recent salmonella outbreak, linked to jalapenos from both Chipotle and Qdoba, federal officials say has reached 27 states. Both illnesses can come from contaminated water. The CDC and FDA saying the tainted lettuce and jalapenos have been traced to Mexico, where 63% of all our imported vegetables are grown. Barbara Kowalczyk leads George Washington University's Institute for Food Safety, and she says recent cuts by the Trump administration may play a role.
We have not invested in food safety the way we should, and that has led to these big outbreaks which erode public trust and really impact the entire system.
The administration has said the cuts have had no impact. But the government acknowledges the FDA, which oversees fresh produce, just inspects a tiny fraction of the imported food.
Only 2%?
Only 2%.
So how do we know the other 98% is safe?
Well, and that's not tested. That's just inspected. FDA doesn't have the resources to go out to those establishments and check to make sure that their food safety systems are working.
Only inspected because testing the food means destroying it.
And Michigan is one of the states that hardest hit by that cyclospora outbreak. What's the latest there?
We finally have some good news to share, Christine. Public health officials in Michigan say cyclospora cases in that state are at long last starting to decline. They have had more than 12,000 cases this summer. And because of that decline, the state believes that most of the lettuce involved in this outbreak is no longer available. And so they have lifted its ban of bagged salads, and they say residents can return to routine washing of lettuce as well. So there's finally some good news when it comes to cyclospora. Peppers are still an issue.
I think it's fair to say Americans have been washing vegetables in a way they never have before this summer.
I certainly have.
Me too. Ann Thompson, thank you. More to come this hour, including the latest on efforts to contain those destructive wildfires in Washington state and the new charges against the man accused of starting one. Plus, we're live in Puerto Rico, where Americans are rationing water due to drought, how the federal government is responding. And later this hour, the new controversy surrounding Amanda Knox, how she's defending her new comedy show in Scotland. We'll get you current after the break. Crews in Washington state are prepping for an increased fire risk this weekend. The danger fueled by hotter, drier, and windier conditions. 1,700 firefighters from 26 states are working round the clock to fight these flames. Some are pulling 24-hour shifts. And last night, we learned more about the man accused of starting one of those fires when he was arraigned in court. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky has the latest on the ground in Spokane.
Yeah, here in Spokane, the fire risk remaining incredibly high, but we're also learning new troubling details about the prime suspect, 37-year-old Aaron Farinacci, who investigators say confessed to starting the Old Trails fire. That is the very one responsible for the devastation we are standing right in the middle of. He did not enter a formal plea when he was in court Thursday. His defense attorney instead requesting for a mental competency hearing to see if his client is even capable of standing trial.
Exhausted firefighters in eastern Washington bracing for another long weekend of searing temperatures and high winds that could quite literally add additional fuel to already raging wildfires. On Thursday, prosecutors charged 37-year-old Aaron Farinacci with 4 new counts of first-degree arson.
You believe you have the sole person responsible in custody?
Yes, we do.
According to court documents, a Spokane County detective says Farinacci confessed to starting the devastating Old Trails fire over the weekend, saying he began planning the fire approximately 2 weeks before August 1st, using a weather app to predict a day that would have high winds, low humidity. According to the police affidavit, Farinacci claims he ignited 25 fires near his home between July and August of last year. He was questioned by police multiple times, but never arrested.
Why were charges not filed against him last year?
It is not so easy to prove in court beyond a reasonable doubt when all you have is suspicion.
Officials say the Spokane complex fires have now burned more than 10,000 acres and destroyed more than 900 homes and buildings. Dozens of additional wildfires are also burning across the West, including a fire in California where one body's been found in a burned home. 65-year-old Herbert Wayne Smith has been arrested and accused of recklessly causing that blaze. Smith telling NBC affiliate KCRA he unintentionally ignited the fire while cutting scrap metal.
If I could go back in time and change it, I would. But I can't go back in time. I'm sorry to everybody out there.
Back in Spokane with fire risk at extreme levels, the sheriff warning any activity that might cause a spark could be disastrous.
Right now, with conditions as they are, and they're deteriorating for the next 3 days, there is a 100% chance that a spark will ignite a fire right now.
And I asked the sheriff about the tens of thousands of people still waiting to go back home with these evacuation orders in place. He says he understands their frustration. However, at this point, the risk of reignition is so incredibly high. They're also concerned about letting people go back home prematurely to where they could potentially have contact with hazardous materials hidden beneath these piles of ash where homes once stood. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Morgan, thank you. From a fire emergency in Washington state to a water crisis in Puerto Rico. Beginning today, officials on the island will begin implementing water rationing measures. More than 180,000 people will go without water for 48 hours at a time. The rotating schedule is intended to keep the island, help it manage its worst drought in more than a decade. Joining us now from San Juan, NBC News correspondent George Solis. And George, what are you hearing from locals? 2 days without water, that's something.
Yeah, that's right, Christine, and that's just the start of this. So many Puerto Ricans telling us they've actually been without water for longer periods, and areas like the one I'm standing in that are supposed to have water today still don't. And any water that is coming in, the pressure is so low that it's barely usable. It's already forcing so many Puerto Ricans, like you see here, who are filling up water at these giant gallons here to make difficult choices, having to make choices like brushing their teeth, washing clothes, or even taking a shower.
Families in Puerto Rico this morning rushing to fill every bottle, bucket, and makeshift container they can find as they prepare to go without running water for 2 days at a time. Locals rushing to tankers like these to fill up with a humanitarian crisis looming.
How bad is the water crisis right now?
It's extremely bad. It's something really hard to handle. We shouldn't be living like this.
The contentious water rationing plan, designed to help the island weather a historic summer drought and aging infrastructure that's already left some residents without water for days at a time.
Today's my 4th day without water.
This is the Carraízo Reservoir, the largest source of drinking water for the San Juan metro area. The water receding so far, this floating dock now sitting on dry land. July was the city's driest month on record in more than 120 years. And while there's been some rain, it has not been enough to help. 2/3 of the island now under moderate to extreme drought conditions. Puerto Rico's governor saying the situation is out of their control. I don't produce the water. No engineer produces it. God produces it, she says. But that offers little comfort to residents who are demanding accountability as they are forced to make difficult choices.
Nobody deserves to live like this.
Frustrations reaching a boiling point with no relief in sight.
People are upset.
Yeah, they're upset. And they should be.
And George, how long could this rationing last?
Yeah, Christine, it's a great question. Officials saying they actually don't know at this point, given the drought conditions. This spigot here offering a lifeline to so many. It's important to note we're also in an El Nino period, which means conditions are drier and hotter than normal, which means everyone that you see here trying to fill these water buckets, including the elderly, have to do so in the extreme heat. Christine.
All right, George Solis in San Juan, thank you. Coming up, breaking news out of Asia, a deadly school shooting in Thailand, at least 7 people killed. What we know about that attack. Plus, what we know about the man who snuck onto a JetBlue plane and was caught sleeping. We have more current right after this. From a controversial new law to a man caught sleeping on a locked JetBlue plane. Let's get you current on the other headlines we're following today. Senator Marsha Blackburn won the Republican primary for Tennessee governor. Blackburn defeated Representative John Rose for the nomination. The senator is a Trump ally, though the president did not endorse anyone in that race. She is a heavy favorite to win the general election in November. If Blackburn does secure the win, she would be the state's first female governor. Terminally ill people in New York can now request prescription drugs to help end their lives. The controversial new law is available only to adults with less than 6 months to live. The law comes with safeguards, including a waiting period to fill prescriptions and a mandatory mental health evaluation. The measure faced intense opposition, including from New York's Catholic Conference. Advocates say the law provides autonomy for those suffering. An alleged trespasser was found sleeping on a JetBlue plane in Florida. According to police, employees found this man asleep in an aircraft parked for maintenance. Police say video surveillance showed him climbing a fence into the restricted area the night before. He allegedly snuck in through a door that was left open for employees. He's now behind bars, held on a $10,000 bond. Turning now to breaking news in Thailand after a deadly school shooting outside Bangkok. You can hear the gunfire there ringing out as students and staff huddled for safety under desks. Police say a 14-year-old student opened fire before taking his own life. At least 8 people were killed, more than 30 others hurt, according to Thailand's prime minister. Authorities say the teen also shot and killed his grandparents before that school attack. NBC News international correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now. Janice, what more are we learning about what happened here and the gunman?
Well, the shooting happened in the morning north of Bangkok, and you showed that video on social media taken inside a classroom, students huddling under a desk. One of the students told Reuters that at first he thought somebody was setting off firecrackers because he heard bangs followed by quiet and then more bangs. Police say that the gunman fired at least 26 shots. The 5 victims at the school were confirmed to be staff. They were teachers. Then the teenager turned the gun on himself. Police say that there were multiple rounds of ammunition that were found around him. The handgun he had been using was registered to his grandfather, who was a former government school teacher. At this point, authorities aren't clear on, or at least they're not saying, how it is that the 14-year-old was able to get access to it. Christine?
And Janice, have authorities indicated how the surviving victims are faring this hour?
Well, police have seized computers, electronic devices from the gunman's home. They say that he had been viewing websites recently that were related to mass shootings. The country's prime minister has also arrived at the site, and he was telling media that there's growing evidence mounting that the teenager had planned this attack. It's triggering a real debate right now about gun control, about tighter restrictions around ownership. Thailand has one of the highest rates of civilian gun ownership in all of Southeast Asia, and there have been several high-profile shootings in recent years. Among the people who were injured at the school, police are saying that at least 9 of them are said to be in critical condition, as they're now piecing together how and why a gunman who was barely a teenager was able to carry out this attack. Christine?
All right, Janice Mackey-Frayer, just a tragedy there. Thank you. Amanda Knox, the American student once convicted then acquitted in the 2007 murder of her college roommate, Meredith Kirchner, in Italy, is back in the spotlight. This time it's over a comedy show about her experiences in Italy that she's taking to a festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, sparking outrage from Kirchner's family and calls for it to be canceled. NBC correspondent Danielle Hamamdin has that story. Danielle?
The murder case involving Amanda Knox has been closed for years, but she is still making headlines. We've heard from her in interviews, books she's written, TV series, but this is new. She says she's turning to comedy to tell the story of how she was wrongly vilified. Amanda Knox, once at the center of a high-profile murder case, is back in the headlines this morning, only this time she's not in court, but up on stage and facing backlash for the show she's about to put on. Knox is debuting a comedy show tonight in Edinburgh, Scotland. She says it's about motherhood and how she'll explain to her own daughter what happened to her in Italy nearly 20 years ago.
What's the worst you can do to me? I bombed in a courtroom and they sent me to prison, so I'm just saying I'd rather be heckled than shackled.
Back in 2007 in Italy, Knox was arrested and convicted of murdering her British roommate, 21-year-old student Meredith Kirchner. The case drawing global attention, with Knox serving 4 years in prison. She was later cleared of the charges following a retrial.
I'm so grateful to have my life back.
Now her new comedy, Cartwheel, named after the claim she did cartwheels at the police station after being questioned by police, is being heavily criticized. Among those speaking out, Meredith Kirchner's sister Stephanie, who says,
we felt very strongly that the violence surrounding the theme is not appropriate for a platform at a comedy show. But I would have hoped that 2 decades on, we'd maybe have a little bit more empathy.
Knox, who's already written 2 books about her ordeal, says this is just another format to tell her side of the story.
I can't speak to what is or is not triggering to Meredith's family. What I can say is that I've never seen the kind of scrutiny and criticism pointed towards a wrongly accused man that I've seen pointed towards me.
Despite the controversy, the show is sold out.
Congratulations, Amanda. You're not guilty. You're just deeply unsettling to the general public.
A petition calling for the festival hosting Knox to cancel her performance has now amassed thousands of signatures, saying the show mocks the horrific events surrounding Meredith's murder and aims to somehow turn the tragedy into entertainment. In response, Knox said that her show actually honors Meredith Kercher's memory and calls out the violence that was done to her and to Knox herself. We're also hearing from the director of the festival, who says the decision whether to go ahead or not with the show lies with Amanda and the venue hosting it. He said the festival isn't responsible for programming, but that they've never been afraid of controversy.
All right, Danielle, thank you so much. Now, here's something new for you this Friday. How current are you on the week's news? We're going to test your knowledge throughout the show. If you've been watching, this is going to be good. Our first question, the U.S. recently imposed a ban on importing what product from China? Was it cars, phones, humanoid robots, or counterfeit purses? Scan the code if you want to get the quiz sent to your phone by downloading the NBC News app. We're going to share the answer later this hour. All right, coming up, the so-called master of disguise thief caught after allegedly carrying out 10 armed robberies, how the feds finally caught up to him, plus the heartbreaking testimony in the Lindsay Clancy trial, what the jury heard from the medical examiner that brought the mother on trial to tears. We'll get you current after this. Extremely difficult testimony during the murder trial of Lindsay Clancy, forcing an unscheduled break yesterday. The 35-year-old mother was seen sobbing uncontrollably, holding her attorney's hand as the medical examiner took the stage. Jurors visibly upset as they viewed autopsy photos of her youngest child, 8-month-old Callan. Additional testimony from her friends and father-in-law described her as a loving mother, but they also acknowledged her struggles with mental health, recalling times Clancy mentioned brain fog and dark thoughts leading up to the killings. Joining us now, NBC News legal analyst Misty Maris. Misty, it wasn't only Clancy who seemed to really struggle under the weight of that testimony, but the jury, too. What role could the medical examiner's testimony play in this prosecution's case?
Really difficult day for everybody in the courtroom. Not only the medical examiner's testimony, but also autopsy photos that are not public shown to the jurors. But Christine, the reason that this testimony is coming in when Lindsay Clancy has admitted to killing the children. So it's not a whodunit. That's not the issue. But prosecutors have to prove intent. And they also have to prove that the killing was done with extreme cruelty. So the medical examiner's testimony is going to talk about the means and manner of death. And that's all going to play into those elements that prosecutors need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
Just an emotional trial, a horrific crime, and we'll get more on that in the days ahead. Misty Maris, thank you so much. We want to return you to Capitol Hill now in our breaking news. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy speaking now on the floor, where he's set to announce his decision on Todd Blanche's nomination for Attorney General. Let's listen.
Now on to the specific nomination. Since Mr. Blanche passed out of Judiciary Committee on August the 4th, I've spoken to Mr. Blanche 5 or 6 times. We have texted many more. I just got off the phone with him. I've spoken multiple times to Senators Murkowski, Cornyn, Tillis. Senator Whitehouse shared his concerns. Additionally, I spoke with current and past administration officials, including a long conversation with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Late last night, I spoke to two. I am told that Senate confirmation is important in interactions with the President, with others in the Cabinet, and is important to DOJ employees in general. Being Senate confirmed gives him greater leverage to push for things that should be pushed for. This does not demean the Senate's role. Important issues have been discussed through this process, and Mr. Blanche has made commitments. Now on to the specific nomination. Since Mr. Blanche passed out of Judiciary Committee on August the 4th, I've spoken to Mr. Blanche 5 or 6 times. We have texted many more. I just got off the phone with him. I've spoken multiple times to Senators Murkowski, Cornyn, Tillis. Senator Whitehouse shared his concerns. Additionally, I spoke with current and past administration officials, including a long conversation with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Late last night, I spoke to 2 U.S. attorneys from Louisiana, David Corsell and Kurt Wall. Of course, there's been a lot to read and a lot to consider, and I slept on it overnight. Let's start with the concerns. Mr. Blanche showed poor judgment in approving the anti-weaponization slush fund and exempting the president from IRS audits. No American should be unfairly targeted by the law, but no American should be above the law. Mr. Blanche said these were mistakes, and he has made efforts to kill the slush fund. I am particularly concerned about episodes of apparent lawfare. DOJ bringing suits against political enemies. Both parties, presidents of both parties, have been guilty of this. It must stop. It should stop now. A never-ending cycle of prosecuting political enemies undermines the rule of law, degrades the public's trust in our institutions, and makes our politics more extreme when we need to unite to solve the big problems of our time. I'm not entirely satisfied where this is, and I have no doubt that I'll have concern in the future. I will note that I've learned that some of the cases that have been publicly reported to be under investigation by the Department of Justice have been dismissed or are no longer being pursued. I am realistic that President Trump can be unrelenting on this, but this will be true no matter who the Attorney General is, and this is the rationale for having a Senate-confirmed Attorney General with more leverage to push back. I will also note that Mr. Blanche is criticized for things over which he has no control. He points out that he has been criticized for presidential pardons given to January 6 rioters, some of whom assaulted police officers. Many of us were here then. But this is a presidential prerogative, and he is not the president. He also points out that he can advise the president, but the president is not obligated to take his advice. That is the same thing that former Attorney General Barr said in a separate conversation. And Mr. President, I can absolutely believe that President Trump at times would not take advice. But even critics admit that Mr. Blanche knows the law and is a hands-on administrator. He has instructed U.S. attorneys to focus on violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud in programs like Medicare and Medicaid. Mr. Corsell, the U.S. Attorney in New Orleans, says that when he needed extra resources, Acting Attorney General Blanche provided them to finish a big drug case. Both Mr. Corsell and Mr. Walls said that DOJ has accountability measures for each prosecutor in their office, and that there are weekly calls between their offices and DOJ to review the performance of each prosecutor. That morale was high, not despite the accountability measures, but because of the accountability measures. More cases were being processed and convictions being obtained. David Corsell spoke of almost $1 billion in fraud being recovered for the U.S. taxpayer from health care fraud. Both men said that having a permanent Senate-confirmed Attorney General was important. I cannot overstate Mr. Walls and Mr. Corsell's support for Mr. Blanche. When former Attorney General Bill Barr endorsed Mr. Blanche, he said Mr. Blanche will run the department as effectively as anyone can under President Trump. Some have called that faint praise. I don't think that it is. I think it is a reality. Barr specifically addressed the allegation that Mr. Blanche would be a yes man for the president. He said that any attorney to represent a client well has to have tough conversations and confront a client with difficult truths. That because of his previous attorney-client relationship with President Trump, Mr. Blanche would be precisely the person to push back on President Trump. But that ultimately, and here Barr echoed what I heard from Blanche, decisions are made by the president. Mr. Blanche is not perfect, and he will tell you this, but the choice is not between perfection and Mr. Blanche. It is between Mr. Blanche and another acting attorney general who may not run the department effectively under President Trump, and who indeed may not be as good as Mr. Blanche. This puts at risk the progress made fighting violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud. And this does not serve the American people well. This is not a referendum on President Trump. It is a decision regarding Mr. Blanche in very specific circumstances. All considered, I will vote for Mr. Blanche. I'll be criticized for this vote. What's new?
All right, joining us again, NBC Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. So after some explanation, we now know that the senator is a yes.
Yeah, and I don't think that we should view this as all that much of a surprise, Christine. The sense that you always got from both Senator Cassidy and Senator Tillis and Senator Cornyn, who had reservations about Todd Blanche, who had also run afoul of President Trump, who are all on their way out of the Senate, was that they wanted to get to a yes, but they were going to ask very tough questions of Blanche, that they were going to try and figure a way to get there. And in the explanation that you hear from Senator Cassidy here, that's exactly what happened. It appears that he relied very heavily on the counsel of the two U.S. attorneys from Louisiana, of which he has a close relationship with. Both of them encouraged him to vote yes for Blanche. Worth noting that Blanche is their boss, so they probably had a vested interest in that. But regardless, this is essentially a done deal. If Bill Cassidy is going to vote yes, That puts Todd Blanche over the threshold necessary. It will be all Republican votes. Every Democrat will vote no, and we'll have 2 Republicans that will vote no, but that will be enough to get him over the majority threshold, and he will be the next Senate-confirmed Attorney General. Christine.
One of the reasons seems to be he wants a Senate-confirmed candidate running the show there, not necessarily another acting AG, right? He was talking about the stability for the department.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of concern among senators that if they just give away this responsibility, if they just vote no, President Trump will just keep him in that space in an acting capacity, and essentially the Senate's role in all of this becomes nil and void, and that could be problematic down the road. And also a potential replacement for Todd Blanche could be worse. I certainly think that went into the decision-making process here, but regardless, the end result is the end result, and at the end of the day, it's not all that much of a surprise.
All right, Ryan Nobles for us on Capitol Hill. Thanks, Ryan. After the break, it's been an amazing year of sports, but what do the highs and lows of the game do to our mind and our body? Our report on that just ahead. And coming up next hour, Meta ordered to pay $500 million after a jury found the parent company of Facebook and Instagram wasn't doing enough to protect kids. Where that money could go. More current right after this. And welcome back. So, how current are you? Earlier in our news quiz, we asked what product the U.S. recently imposed a ban on importing from China. The answer is C, humanoid robots. New Trump administration rules banning the tech made in China and in other countries have also swept up a product that is already a fixture in American homes, the smart vacuum. Okay, let's keep it going and switch to the next one. Which pop star's announced break from the spotlight is sparking fresh debate over body commentary? Possible answers are on your screen. We're going to have an answer for that one for you in our next hour. All right, a master of disguise. That's what federal authorities are calling an armed robber known for his rotating costumes every time he would target a store, from construction worker to hospital garb to dressing like he was working security. NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist has that story.
The feds called him a master of disguise, carrying out armed robberies in the outskirts of Atlanta. The FBI says the man in these disguises is 33-year-old Tracy Darrell Mingo, accused of robbing 10 businesses at gunpoint between October 2025 and January of this year. Mingo would dress as a construction worker, a security guard, even in hospital scrubs to avoid being recognized, according to authorities. Department of Justice officials say Mingo struck multiple locations of Circle K, Subway, and Family Dollar stores.
This is one of the locations the suspect allegedly robbed. He would enter each store late at night after nearly all the customers were gone, and authorities say that's when he would rob the employees at gunpoint.
Law enforcement found and arrested him just as it appeared he was putting on the same security guard disguise used during a robbery the night before. Officials say they stopped him before anyone was hurt. Mingo now faces a range of charges, including robbery and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He could face up to 63 years behind bars. Aaron Gilchrist, NBC News.
All right, from the Knicks to the World Cup, it's been a landmark year for sports. Now, while we all love the excitement and the drama of a tense game, you might not realize how much the body reacts while your favorite team is about to win it all or fumble at the last second. NBC News medical reporter Dr. Akshay Sayal looks at your brain on sports.
As a doctor, I'm qualified to say America has a fever.
A sports fever. From the World Cup taking over the U.S. coast to coast, to the New York Knicks ending a 53-year championship drought. This summer, sports fans feeling the highs and lows.
I'm just sad.
But what's going on under the surface?
So much is happening in the brains and the bodies of fans and people when they're watching sports. So you get the release of hormones like the stress hormone cortisol, like testosterone, and you get bodily changes like increases in heart rate, increases in stress levels.
Researchers looking into how the body reacts to watching sports have found significant markers of higher stress levels, almost like the fans are actually on the field.
The stress levels and heart rates of the fans really mimic what is actually going on the pitch.
Professor Christian Deutschler tracked soccer fans' vitals for 3 months while their team was in the German Cup final. He found that the heart rates of the fans spiked when they scored a goal, and overall, people's pulses jumped an average of 41% while watching the final.
you could actually visually identify 3 days of being different to all other days. And these were days where the team was actually playing.
And it's not just soccer. A study in the U.S. found blood pressure and heart rates in football fans rose during games in the 2009 NFL playoffs. And those impacts could have a dark side. One report found cardiovascular deaths in Los Angeles actually increased significantly after the Rams lost the 1980 Super Bowl and decreased 4 years later when the Raiders won it.
This is still extremely rare. It's not an overwhelming risk that I think people should be cautious about.
We went to a sports bar to watch the Yankees take on the St. Louis Cardinals, to see if fans had noticed any of those physiologic symptoms.
Talk to me about that thrill you experience. What does it feel like?
Yeah, you're always pins and needles. You're on the edge of your seat the entire time.
What does your body feel like when you watch sports?
Very stressed out. Your heart is racing all the time.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I just feel so much a part of it.
In the playoffs, there's no break. It's just a long, drawn-out stress test.
And by the way, regularly combining these heightened stress levels with greasy food like this might be something you want to think about.
Bowl games are back, bigger and better than ever.
Sports, of course, throughout history, helping channel some of our aggressive instincts to fight into healthy competition, from the ancient Greek Olympics to the national pride that comes with the World Cup today. And while the health benefits of exercise have been known just as long, scientists say just watching sports may even have some positive effects.
Humans are such social creatures. We love being around other people, and particularly people who share in our interests and our goals, and we can find meaning together.
Some research shows that people who attend live sporting events record higher levels of life satisfaction and lower levels of loneliness. Another found that across Europe, national team wins in the 2024 Euro Cup soccer tournament were associated with a 27% increase in sexual activity, meaning even with some minor risks, the benefits of a big win could continue long after the final whistle. Dr. Akshay Sayal, NBC News.
All right, there's much more news ahead. The next hour of Current starts right now. Good morning. It's 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. on the West Coast. I'm Christine Romans. Let's get you current. Breaking news moments ago, Republican Senator Bill Cassidy announced he will vote in favor of President Trump's pick for Attorney General Todd Blanche, what it means for Blanche's path to confirmation. July jobs. The U.S. economy shed 23,000 jobs last month. The reason for the unexpected weakness. Landmark ruling. Social media giant Meta was ordered to pay nearly $1 billion to address kids' mental health online. What the decision, how it could reshape big tech. Diplomatic push. Peace talks with Iran are dragging on despite President Trump's claim a breakthrough could come this week. The effort taking place behind the scenes. And good to be with you this Friday, August 7th. We've got a lot of news to get to this morning. Let's begin this hour with breaking news. A landmark ruling in a case against Meta. The social media giant has been ordered by a New Mexico court to pay $567 million after a jury found them liable for misleading the safety of its platforms. Meta says it will appeal. Joining us now is NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung. Tell us more about this ruling, Brian.
Yeah, and by the way, that $567 million is on top of what had already been ordered in the first stage of this trial. That was $375 million in damages. That means Meta could be on the hook to pay almost $1 billion as a result of this. Again, what New Mexico's AG is alleging in this case is that Meta didn't do enough to protect specifically young children and teens on the platform from getting addicted, from developing mental health issues, and also not protecting them from sexual exploitation. Now, the result of this could be changes to the platform itself. At least in New Mexico, the court is ordering Meta to implement things like new banners and info screens, improved age detectors to verify the age of young people signing up for Instagram, time limits for under a certain number of hours, and also a school reporting portal where teachers could flag to Instagram if they believe that someone who is too young for the platform is trying to sign up against the terms of use, because, again, technically, no one under the age of 13 is supposed to be on those platforms.
The size of this is substantial. It is clearly a rebuke. This court has sent a rebuke to the company. But put it in perspective for how huge Meta is and what it would mean kind of to its bottom line.
Well, I think it's a big number, right? When you think about that $942 million in total they're on the hook for. Yeah. But you have to remember, this is a company that made $60 billion in profits in 2025 alone. And so this is a drop in the bucket. But I should also point out that Meta is facing a number of other legal challenges as well.
Meta vowing to appeal the ruling, so this might not be the end of this, of
That's
course.
right.
What are we hearing from them today?
Yeah, well, they say that they're appealing, that they plan on appealing it. They argue that they're working hard to keep people safe, and they have put into place some of these measures in the last few months where, authorities could be alerted if anyone is interacting with, for example, their artificial intelligence with any thoughts of suicidal ideation. But again, the challenge here is there are a number of other lawsuits around the country, thousands of lawsuits waiting in the wings, arguing that there were individual teens that had mental health issues as a result of getting addicted to these platforms. And you also have a major case happening later on this month in Oakland, California, the first of 29 states suing Meta, arguing that they didn't do enough to protect children from getting addicted on these apps. What will the courts say there? That's going to be a big one as well.
All right, Brian Chung, nice to see you. Thanks, Brian. Right, also breaking this morning, a new jobs report that shows a lackluster month for the labor market. The U.S. economy lost 23,000 jobs in July, and the unemployment rate ticked down to 4.1%. For the wrong reasons. That number reflects Americans leaving the labor force. Joining us now, NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, May and June's numbers were also revised down. You know, we like to say the trend is your friend, and so that's 3 months in a row suggesting a lackluster performance. The president was just touting in Las Vegas that the economy is strong. That's a golden age for American workers. What are we hearing from the White House this morning?
Yeah, I think frenemy might be the best way to describe that trend right now, Christine. Look, the White House is pointing to manufacturing jobs going up by about 100,000, even though the net job number was down 23,000. So you see White House spokesman Kush Desai talking about a manufacturing resurgence, factory construction. The director of the White House Economic Council was out here earlier today, Kevin Hassett, talking about basically the same things and saying that he believes the economy is on track and downplaying the losses and basically saying that they are the result of local education cuts, meaning teachers come to the end of the year, and the World Cup, temporary workers no longer being employed. Of course, the school year ends every year and has for many, many years.
That's right. That's something that happens a lot. But look, let's talk about what it means heading to the midterms. You know, we heard the Treasury Secretary yesterday essentially say that there is no K-shaped economy, and the public feels bad about the economy because of misinformation, not because of high prices. And the president has really downplayed the affordability crisis, saying it essentially doesn't even exist. This is important stuff for the midterms.
Yeah, administration officials are saying what the last administration officials said, which is believe them, not your lying wallet. Americans know how the economy is doing. They know how their personal economy is doing. And you can throw all the numbers in the world at them. You know, I don't think each of them's tracking the overall, sort of meta jobs numbers on a daily basis. But they do know what the price of goods are, and they do know what their income is like. And so, you've got a president who has extremely low approval on the economy. I think the last poll I saw showed him at a 32% approval on the economy, and he needs to get traction. So if you look at the numbers today, they're not incredibly bad. They're certainly not incredibly good, but they're also not the kind of thing that would help him get a foothold and start building traction toward rebuilding faith in his ability to handle the economy, which was when he came into office, the first time a decade or so ago was considered a strength for him.
Yeah, ironically, no, they're not incredibly bad, but they're way, way less than they were during the Biden administration. And that was when President Trump was saying that it was a disaster during the Biden administration. Quickly,
Right.
We heard from the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, this morning that the president has been calling the new Fed chief, Kevin Warsh. What more are we learning about that?
Well, what we know is that what Hassett said, which is the president wants interest rates cut. The Fed has been reluctant to do that. In fact, there's been some talk of raising interest rates. As you well know, Christine, if they cut interest rates, there's a huge chance of inflation rising.
All right, Jonathan Allen, thank you so much at the White House for us this morning. Breaking news over on Capitol Hill. Senator Bill Cassidy now says he will support Todd Blanche's nomination for Attorney General, a critical boost for a confirmation that had been hanging by a thread. The Louisiana Republicans' decision comes after Senator Lisa Murkowski announced this morning she will vote no. Murkowski joins Susan Collins in opposing Blanche, but Cassidy's support could now help keep the nomination alive. NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell joins us now. Kelly, Blanche's nomination had already been just hanging on there. How does Cassidy's decision maybe secure his nomination now?
It's very significant because Bill Cassidy has had experience in the area of taking on faith what a Trump cabinet official would say and then being disappointed. That in the case of Robert Kennedy as the HHS secretary, with Cassidy, a physician, and also on a key committee. In this instance, he laid out in great detail the conversations he's had, the rationale for his vote, the concerns that he has, offset by what he believes is the reality of a choice between Blanche and perfection or Blanche and some unknown figure who might also be put forward if the Blanche nomination were to fail. Here's how Bill Cassidy outlined it to his fellow senators.
The choice is not between perfection and Mr. Blanche. It is between Mr. Blanche and another acting attorney general who may not run the department effectively under President Trump and who indeed may not be as good as Mr. Blanche. This puts at risk the progress made fighting violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud. And this does not serve the American people well. This is not a referendum on President Trump. It is a decision regarding Mr. Blanche in very specific circumstances. All considered, I will vote for Mr. Blanche.
And that is critical because with the 2 no votes that already exist, there really was no more wiggle room. Right now, the question is, there's an expectation Mitch McConnell will not cast a vote because he has just been released from the hospital and says that he is going to be continuing his recovery through the August recess. So it looks like Blanche is in a position to be confirmed, but the vote is not yet set. And there has been a lot of work behind the scenes with Blanche and others trying to appeal to these various senators. Of course, with the vice president as a potential tiebreaker, it looks like Blanche is on a glide path at this point.
And Kelly, before we let you go, Ohio Senator John Husted is now calling on Congressman Max Miller to resign amid multiple domestic abuse allegations which Miller denies. What are you hearing about where things stand on Miller's plans right now?
At the moment, Miller is still saying he is in the race to seek a 3rd term. Husted's ask for Miller to step down matches that of Bernie Moreno, who is a family member of Max Miller, the former father-in-law, who's been very outspoken in concerns about allegations his daughter has made against Miller that he denies, allegations of physical abuse and so forth in a contested situation of divorce and custody. Miller has the ability to stay in the race if he chooses to, but there's a lot of pressure being brought to bear where people are saying, those in office are saying, it's right for him to step aside in this case or even resign his current seat.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell for us in Washington. Thanks, Kelly. Turning now to the war with Iran, President Trump says a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz could be on the horizon. That strait, of course, a critical waterway in the Middle East. 1/5 of the world's oil supply flows through that strait. When it's shut down, oil and gas prices go up. Here's what the president said in the Oval Office yesterday.
It's sort of open right now. You know, we have a thing called the blockade headed up by the U.S. Navy, and we control it. And now we control it, but they can always shoot something. They always have something or drop a mine. I'm involved in the negotiation. I think we're doing fine. It could be soon.
We are 160 days into the war with Iran. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll found half of U.S. adults believe the decision to attack Iran will destabilize the Middle East. 17% said the region would become more stable. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons is in the region for us. Keir, you heard the president there say the strait is sort of open. There's nothing, I mean, there's hardly anything going through there compared with what was happening before the war.
Yeah, I mean, it's not open the way it used to be. And looking at reports coming out of Iran, it may not be. Because what we're hearing from Iranian media, Fars, for example, a semi-official news agency in Iran, is that the details of this agreement are things like that there will be some kind of charge or fee or money exchanged for vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz, and even that US and Israeli ships will not be allowed to pass through. Now, we should caveat that by saying that with Iran, they make these statements, these details come out, and then they turn out not to be true. And that may be the case here as well. We wait to know. We wait to see what this agreement looks like, if we get it at all. But certainly there's a real chance here that there's going to be a storm of controversy when it does emerge. I will tell you just a bit of news. Spokesperson for the National Security Commission in Iran is saying the general framework of the agreement with Oman has been specified, and soon the final text and details will also be announced. I guess one thing to just think about, Christine, is whether, if there is a backlash, whether that shifts President Trump's position, even if the thing is agreed. And certainly inside Iran, there are clearly arguments and deep divisions over whether they should sign up to this. So this isn't done. I mean, I would just say this: the deal isn't done, and even if it does get done, it's not necessarily done.
Yeah, 130 ships a day were going through there before this war began, and you had the free flow of oil through the region. Now it's a supply chain nightmare, frankly, and that's what we've been seeing in oil prices. But that's just one part of the conflict, right? What about the larger agreement to end the war outright? Any movement on that front?
Yeah, no, not really. I will just say, you're right. But one of the things that is shifting in this region is that you're seeing countries react to the war and the implications of the war and doing things like building new pipelines. UAE, for example, is turning to Fujairah, which is on the other side of the country. It doesn't have to use the Strait of Hormuz to try to use that there. So, these countries are figuring out how to work around this new world. And an example of that in Saudi Arabia right now is that Pakistan and Turkey's leaders are there signing a defense pact, which is an indication that Saudi Arabia and those countries are looking for ways to get themselves defended that go beyond their very deep strategic relationship with the United States. So things are shifting and things are changing. To your question about the wider peace deal, there is so much more to get to, including the nuclear negotiations. And just look how difficult it's been just to try and open up this piece of water. It's a long road ahead, let's say that, Christine.
All right, Keir Simmons, thank you so much, Keir. Nice to see you there in Doha today. President Trump is making another attempt at curbing birthright citizenship. He just signed 2 executive orders after already being denied by the Supreme Court. Now, one order limits the number of people who are eligible for birthright citizenship. The other cracks down on what the White House calls birth tourism. Joining us now, NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley. Julia, what are we hearing from the president and his allies about how these orders logistically would be implemented?
Well, the logistics, Christine, are a little bit up in the air at this moment. What the president laid out in the Oval Office yesterday is his attempt to try to work around that Supreme Court order that limited his first go at ending birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court thought that was in violation of the 14th Amendment, and he would need Congress in order to do it. And really, Christine, he would still need Congress to do a lot of what he is proposing in this order unless he's willing to face fresh rounds of litigation. One way he wants to limit birthright citizenship is to people who were born to alien enemies. Of course, he's used the Alien Enemies Act to target 2 gangs. He would have to prove that the parents are part of those gangs. And of course, that could give rise to lawsuits saying that those children are being discriminated. Also, he talks about children born in foreign territories of the United States. Of course, he would need Congress to go through that because Congress and the courts have already upheld that children born in places like Puerto Rico or Guam, for example, are U.S. citizens. Another piece of this includes the children of U.S. diplomats. Already, if a parent is here on a diplomatic visa, a child born to that person is not a U.S. citizen. So there's really no change there. And people I'm speaking to inside DHS says there's really no law enforcement capabilities that go along with this executive order.
What are legal and immigration advocacy groups saying in response? I can imagine many of them say they'll fight it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we heard from the ACLU quick out of the gate saying that the Supreme Court has already weighed in on this and that the president has already, that no additional executive citizenship is guaranteed by the Constitution. No additional executive order can change the meaning of the Constitution, and any executive order that tries to rewrite birthright citizenship will meet the same fate as the last one. And so there's the ACLU weighing in saying that, look, this is going to hit the same dead end.
Explain how these new orders fit into the Trump administration's broader immigration agenda.
Well, look, this is a way to turn the conversation back. They want to turn the conversation away from what you just saw Keir reporting on and outside of Iran and the Strait of Hormuz, and to try to focus back on immigration, which has been a bread and butter issue. One thing they have done is they reached record high arrest numbers in July. They arrested over 51,000 people by ICE. They are now holding 67,000 people in ICE custody. There's been a big ramp up of immigration enforcement. And this is another way the president can bring the conversation back to immigration through this executive order, even if it doesn't have a lot of teeth, Christine.
All right, Julia Ainsley. Thank you so much, Julia. Coming up, investigators say the man accused of setting one of the Washington wildfires confessed, and fire crews are bracing for another challenging weekend. Plus, foodborne illnesses are sickening people across the country, the ripple effect hitting restaurants and food companies. And later, it's no secret AI is reshaping the labor market. Could we be on the brink of a jobs apocalypse? Get you current after the break. In Washington state, firefighters are working nonstop to battle raging wildfires on the ground. And in the sky, there's another danger, toxic air. Air quality alerts are in effect across the Pacific Northwest. Smoke from the flames could blow as far east as the Midwest and Great Lakes regions, with high winds on the way. Today, we're also learning more about the man accused of starting one of those fires. It's considered the most destructive in the state's history. NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky has the latest from Spokane. Morgan?
Yeah, here in Spokane, that fire risk remaining incredibly high. And we're also learning new troubling details about the prime suspect, 37-year-old Aaron Farinacci, who investigators say confessed to starting the Old Trails fire. That is the massive blaze that swallowed entire neighborhoods and is responsible for the devastation we are standing right in the middle of. Not only that, but court documents show that Farinacci says that he looked specifically for a red flag day that would have high heat and low humidity to ignite that fire, and that he'd been planning it for roughly 2 weeks' time. Investigators also went back and looked at calls dating back to July of 2025 and found enough evidence to charge Farinacci with 4 new counts of first-degree arson, bringing the total to 5 felony arson charges. Now, he is due in back on September 4th. In the meantime, fire crews are slowly but surely working in on these 3 separate blazes that make up the Spokane complex fires. However, they're going to be facing an incredible battle today because temperatures could be approaching 100 degrees. And on Saturday, there is a return for potential gusty winds. Those 2 factors combined left the county sheriff here telling me if there is a spark that is thrown somewhere in this urban wildlife interface, there is a 100% chance that a new fire will start. So that is the uneasy tension that is being felt in and around this area as tens of thousands of people still wait under evacuation orders before going back home. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Morgan Chesky, thank you. Turning to the latest on the foodborne illnesses now in nearly every state, the CDC and FDA are dialing in on a possible connection between the 2 outbreaks where the contaminated produce is coming from. And that's raising questions about who is responsible for making sure our food is safe. Joining us now, NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson. And Ann, health officials are now turning their focus to Mexico. Explain why.
That's because both the lettuce that is linked to cyclospora and the jalapeno peppers that were tainted with salmonella both come from Mexico. And in fact, 63% of our imported vegetables come from Mexico. The working theory, according to food safety experts, is that the vegetables got contaminated by water, and water carrying the salmonella and cyclospora. And so that raises questions about sanitation practices. So FDA and CDC officials will be looking at sanitation records in the 2 farms where these vegetables were raised to see what is going on and if there have been any violations.
And you spoke to a food expert about just how much the FDA sort of oversees fresh produce, and it's really a tiny fraction here. Here's what they had to say.
They only inspect 2% of all imported products.
Only 2%?
Only 2%.
So how do we know the other 98% is safe?
Well, and that's not tested. That's just inspected. FDA doesn't have the resources to go out to those establishments and check to make sure that their food safety systems are working.
So what's the difference between, I guess, testing and inspecting food?
Well, inspecting, you're looking for dirt or bugs or bruises or something. The problem with salmonella and cyclospora, you can't see them with the naked eye. So that's a big problem. To test the food, you have to destroy it. And so they don't want to do that. That's why looking at those records, looking at where the food was grown, what the sanitation practices are, where it was processed, that's why that is also important.
You have some good news out of Michigan.
I do,
Can you please give us the good news?
And the good news is about cyclospora and the state of Michigan, which has actually seen a decline in cases after hitting a high of more than 12,000 cases this summer. And they say because cases are now going down, they are lifting their ban on bag salads. And they're saying you can go back to the way you used to take care of lettuce, and that is wash it and dry it before you serve it.
All right, Ann Thompson, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. From the cost of a home to a crackdown on Meta's smart glasses, let's get you financially current on the other headlines we're following today. Mortgage rates are up for a fifth week in a row. The average 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, one of the most common for homeowners, is now at 6.69%. That's according to the mortgage buying firm Freddie Mac. Mortgage rates had been falling before the war with Iran began, but started rising on worries about inflation. Higher rates will make it harder for people to buy a home and ultimately could slow down the housing market. Some venues in the UK are now banning smart glasses. These glasses come equipped with a camera, meaning you can record whoever is in front of you and they don't even know it. Jeremy King, the owner of multiple London restaurants, including Simpsons on the Strand, told The Guardian it was an invasion of privacy for his guests. Likewise, the company that owns some of the biggest theaters in the UK and Scotland said it would ask anyone wearing smart glasses to remove them during a show. And are you feeling lucky? The Powerball jackpot is at an estimated $856 million ahead of tomorrow night's drawing. That makes it the 8th largest prize in Powerball history, and it could get much bigger. Powerball launched in the UK last month, opening the door to even more players, but no matter where you live, the odds of winning are just about the same, just 1 in 292 million. The odds of winning in your 401k, about 100%. Okay, after the break, Kellogg says it's removing artificial dyes from all of its cereals. Will it change the color of your Fruit Loops? And we're seeing the transformation of corporate America as companies adopt AI. We'll talk with an expert about the implications. We'll have more current right after this. From an A-list actress saying she's lucky to be alive to big changes coming to your favorite cereal boxes, let's get you current on the other headlines we're following today. English-American actress Minnie Driver says she's grateful to be alive after a scary car crash in France. In a video posted on her Instagram page, the 56-year-old said she and a friend T-boned another car after it blew through an intersection. The driver says Minnie Driver says she sprained her neck in the accident, but is recovering. Kellogg says it will eliminate all artificial colors in its cereal by the end of 2026. That's a year earlier than the company originally promised. Its products, including Fruit Loop and Apple Jacks, will now get their color from natural sources. The Nashville Zoo is now home to 3 baby Mexican spider monkeys. They were rescued after being stolen from the wild and then sold into the illegal pet trade. Miso, Matcha, and May are just 2 months old. A sad update about a popular social media star battling a rare form of cancer. Sydney Toll died this week at the age of 26 years old. Her family announcing her passing on Instagram to her hundreds of thousands of followers. NBC News correspondent Dana Griffin shares her story and how she inspired so many.
Let's go slay some chemo. For years, Sydney Toll radiated joy, captivating audiences on TikTok with her effervescent spirit. Good morning. Her wit.
Hey, do you guys have any more room under there?
And her love for living life to the fullest. We can do hard things. Even while documenting the darkest chapter of her life, battling a rare and aggressive bile duct cancer, cholangiocarcinoma.
Hey, besties.
Updating her besties through the highs and lows, ignoring negative comments.
Sometimes life is horribly unfair and it doesn't look the way that you want it to, but you still show up for yourself every single day.
And advocating for early screenings.
When detected early, survival rates can reach up to 99%.
But this week's update came from Sydney's mom and brother.
Sid went
peacefully last night. She fought really hard, and we're so proud of her.
Thank you for all of your kind messages of support and love.
In May, a dream came true for Sydney when she walked the runway for Miami Swim Week, just days after refusing her doctor's suggestion to start end-of-life care.
I said no. So we are switching hospitals.
The news of Sydney's passing hitting her more than 1 million followers.
It's just really incredible how somebody we never met in person can still become so meaningful to us.
She's an example of being so incredibly light and passionate and happy and in love with life.
And how impactful was having community and sharing her journey online?
It was hugely impactful for this rare cancer.
Stacey Lindsay is CEO of the Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation.
I think Sydney will inspire the younger generation to be more thoughtful about healthy and positive living because she lived her life in such a positive way.
For Sydney, this was more than turning cancer into content. It was transforming pain into awareness while reshaping people's image of what living with cancer looks like. Dana Griffin, NBC News.
All right, Dana Griffin, thank you for that. Now to our Romans report. Today's new jobs numbers show 23,000 jobs were lost last month. One of the biggest questions, what role is artificial intelligence playing in the American job market right now? Major tech companies, including Microsoft, Oracle, and Meta, they are slimming down as they adopt AI, laying people off. And there's a whole spectrum of forecasts from industry leaders. Anthropic's CEO predicts AI could wipe out half of entry-level white-collar jobs in just a few years. The OpenAI CEO Sam Altman initially projected whole categories of jobs would disappear, be erased. Now he says he doesn't think we'll see a jobs apocalypse. Meanwhile, LinkedIn says it found AI has actually created hundreds of thousands of roles. I talked to billionaire entrepreneur Mark Cuban, asked him what he thinks might happen. Are you worried that AI is going to replace a lot of jobs, especially for young people?
Am I worried it's going to take jobs? Yes. But do I think there'll be a net gain? Yes.
All right, some disruption in the near term. While there may be some jobs lost and others added, many roles may fall somewhere in the middle. The job itself may stick around, but the actual tasks might change. It is a huge transition. And, the Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan says he appeals to companies to keep hiring and make sure workers adapt.
Our job, a corporation's job, is to hire people, pay them well, train them well, get them ready for this brave new thing called AI, et cetera, and make sure that they're successful. So I think we as corporate people, corporate leaders have to take that burden on.
All right, joining us now with his perspective, Caleb Silver. He's chief business editor at People Inc. and editor-in-chief of Investopedia. Okay, Caleb, what role, if any, do you think AI played in today's jobs report? And also, the last year, average job creation only 34,000 a month. That's a lot weaker than in recent years. Is AI to blame?
Yeah, well, if you're looking for an official number, the closest we can get, Christine, is about 112,000. That's according to Challenger Grain Christmas. This is a firm you and I follow for job gains and job losses, especially in the private sector. They say about 112 have been attributed to AI. It doesn't mean a company said we're laying these people off because of AI. They may say we're laying some people off and investing more in AI. So it's still pretty squishy. I think the best way to think about it is the way that Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, talks about it, which is you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by a worker that knows how to use AI. We're probably seeing a lot of that on the surface right now, but it could get deeper. Twice as many job cuts this year related to AI than last year already. We're only about 8 months into the year.
I mean, I think it's clearly going to be disruptive. This is the question I ask CEOs over and over again, and they know that it's going to be disruptive in the near term for workers. There appears to be sort of two schools of thought when it comes to how disruptive it'll be. That it's either going to wipe a lot of things out or it's going to be this revolution that's going to make everybody more efficient. Maybe we'll even have a 3-day work week, Caleb, because AI is going to do so much of this other work. What are you actually seeing?
Yeah, it's going to be somewhere in the middle of all that, just like things always usually end up. It's never one extreme or the other. There's always concerns that it'll be a complete wipeout of the jobs market, and there's always concerns that maybe this is overblown. So it'll probably be somewhere in the middle, and some industries are going to be much more impacted than others. But just think about this uptick in people going to trade schools and apprenticeships and learning skills like HVAC and plumbing. You're seeing actually it increases, double-digit percentage increases in enrollments in these schools because people want to be in jobs where there is low obsolescence obsolescence in hard assets. So you're seeing that happen. At the same time, the software companies are being totally disrupted. You mentioned Oracle, Microsoft. These are the big software companies where software is probably going to be eaten by AI in some form or another. And that's where you'll probably see extended job losses and potentially even through the financial sector and maybe even media.
I'm telling you, I've got 3 teenage boys. I just need one of them to grow up to be an electrician. That's kind of on my list. We need one to be in the skilled trades, at least one, because there's some concern that in the short term, entry-level workers could be wiped out here, and then also some white-collar professionals too, right?
Absolutely. And you're seeing that already, and not in the C-suite itself, but in that tier down, the senior vice president, the vice president level. You're seeing companies start to reckon with the fact that maybe they don't need so much weight in the middle there. And either they're bringing people up that know data science, that know computer analytics, and that know how to use AI. And they're getting rid of the people, the mid managers in the middle, where AI can really handle a lot of those tasks in terms of organizing teams. So you're seeing that happen in some cases. On the other hand, you are seeing some industries come alive with in real life events. I'm at an event right now in Atlanta, 32,000 people at InvestFest here. And that is, an in real life, in-person event is what a lot of experience, a lot of companies are craving, what a lot of consumers are craving. That part of the market is doing well. Healthcare is doing well. If you look at the recent jobs report and the last jobs report for the last couple of years, some industries are going to be all right for the near term. Others are going to be disrupted much more quickly.
I've reported on this group called Raise Us. It's a brand new collaboration between states, educators, and big companies. The idea is you got to find ways to help workers survive the AI upheaval. Who bears the brunt of the responsibility? Is it the workers themselves to figure out how to survive in AI? Is it the CEOs, as Brian Moynihan from Bank of America appeared to suggest? And there are others who think that you might need to someday have something called guaranteed basic income and shorter work weeks. Because workers just, the way that we work right now just won't survive anymore.
Yeah. And you've even heard people like Sam Altman, the founder and CEO of OpenAI, say we should be giving a dividend to American consumers and taxpayers because we're using their information and there'll be less work to do. So a lot of that still needs to be figured out. I think in the near term, you're going to have this disruption industry by industry, company by company to a certain extent. And at the end of the day, it is the workers. It is our responsibility to make sure we are trained for the future. Don't expect some CEO to come along and save the day for us. It is your responsibility to learn how to work in this new 21st century technology. So I would take that responsibility personally if I'm a young person or even if I'm my age trying to find my next job in my career.
You mean like 25, like you're 25? Right?
Yeah, like 25 years old.
I love that you're in InvestFest. You're such a nerd. It's so great. All right, thanks. Nice to see you, Caleb.
Thank you.
All right, so how current are you? Earlier in our news quiz, we asked which pop star's announced break from the spotlight is sparking fresh debate over body commentary. The answer? A. Ariana Grande. The singer addressed the news to a crowd during her show in Chicago Monday night. Grande released her 8th album, Pedal, last week. Okay, our last question of this Friday, and it has a lot of people talking. Spider-Man Brand New Day scored the best domestic box office debut weekend in Hollywood history, taking the crown from what other Marvel film? The titles are right there on your screen. If you want to sign up or take the full NBC News quiz, just scan the code. The answer coming up. All right, as you just heard, Hollywood is getting a much-needed box office boost, but can the summer's biggest hits bring moviegoers back for good? And the WNBA is facing blowback after players and coaches publicly weighed in on gender athletes. How fans are responding to the controversy. We'll get to current after this. A debate swirling around the WNBA. Coaches and stars are voicing their opinions about transgender athletes in women's sports. It started after Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham voiced her support for a ban. It's not the first time sports and political opinions have clashed. NBC News correspondent Yasmin Vasugian has the fallout.
Things are heating up in the WNBA right now, largely off the court, after Indiana Fever guard Sophie Cunningham voiced support for banning transgender girls and women in female sports in a recent ESPN interview. Then doubling down.
When it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that.
Protests popped up outside her next game against the Seattle Storm, both in support and against her. other fans wore T-shirts printed with XX and XY chromosomes on them. Cunningham and the Fever went on to win that game, but not before Seattle Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton got into it with fans who were holding signs supporting Cunningham. A day later, Keaton was suspended from going to the team's next 5 home games and fined an undisclosed amount by the league. The team apologizing to fans for the confrontation. Then at Sunday's game in Minnesota, Lynx coach Cheryl Reeve let her shirt do the talking with "Trans Kids Belong" written on it. She and Cunningham speaking on the court before the game. Keeping things civil, Reeve addressing the conversation with the press afterward.
I think both of us understand that we have platforms, and we both talked about wanting to, more than anything, educate. It was nice to be in person for sure.
And Cunningham's teammate, superstar Caitlin Clark, played it diplomatic in response to the controversy.
It's not really a discussion we really have in our locker room.
But it's not preventing tons of less civil chatter online.
So let's get something straight. Sophie Cunningham can make publicly transphobic comments, triple down on them, and continue to play without facing any real consequences.
Of course, it's not the first time sports have clashed with the political arena. When some players take stands, a firestorm can follow.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, "Get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired."
So keep the political commentary to yourself, or as someone once said, shut up and dribble.
He is not vaccinated. That is a stunner. That is a bombshell. I've got some strong opinions.
But the debate in the WNBA is all coming to a head as the country grapples with the rights of transgender and female athletes. An NBC News poll shows most Americans oppose trans women competing in female sports. But supporters say bans on trans athletes, especially in youth sports, encourage bullying, discrimination, and even violence, and that trans people represent an extremely small percentage of competitors across all levels. A number of leagues recently taking action, the NCAA changing its policy last year, effectively barring trans athletes by limiting competition in women's sports to those assigned female at birth. And the International Olympic Committee this year saying only, quote, biological females can compete starting with the 2028 LA Games. The WNBA does not have a specific policy on transgender athletes. In 30 years of the league, there have been no known players that transition from male to female. Cunningham saying the focus should be on the action on the court.
I just hate how the basketball of it all is just getting overshadowed.
The spotlight is on women's sports more than ever before, raising the stakes for all involved.
Yasmin Vasugian, NBC News.
All right, it's Friday, and Hollywood is on a hot streak, boasting record-breaking box office sales thanks to a whirlwind summer of movies. Just look at all those headlines. The Hollywood Reporter writing, the box office is finally back, selling out IMAX theaters across the country. The Odyssey forcing theaters to drop a new wave of tickets to meet soaring demand. And Spider-Man Brand New Day swinging in to claim the record for the biggest North American movie debut in history. Is Hollywood really out of its slump? Joining us now, NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Molas. We see how crazy these ticket sales are here. People driving in from other states to get to the big fancy theaters. Are the movies just so good they're capturing people's attention?
I mean, I have to say, Christine, that the movies are back. I mean, people have a reason to get off the couch. Netflix and chill is a lot of fun in my house, but when you look at movies like The Odyssey being filmed in 70 millimeter IMAX, when you look at Spider-Man Brand New Day, families and individuals are willing to leave the house for this, but tickets are expensive. So you're not necessarily seeing more people go to the movies, but you are seeing really high numbers at the box office because these premium format tickets are so expensive. Let's take a listen to Chris Randleman, who we interviewed, who is the Chief Revenue Officer for Flix Brewhouse, as to what he's seeing at the box office.
We had unprecedented demand, so it was all hands on deck. We had all of our employees that were available came in to help out in every way that we could. We added more shows. We'd put a show up for sale. It would sell out. We'd add more shows where we could. We started the day at 7:30 in the morning, and the last show was at midnight, which that only happens in very rare occasions.
It's really unbelievable, Christine. And I have to say, Spider-Man Brand New Day, obviously the biggest movie of the year so far in terms of its opening domestically, but worldwide, it has made over $1.15 billion and counting. It's truly unbelievable.
And I know ticket prices are higher, but people are going to the movies and they're willing to pay the higher prices for these tickets. Talk to me a little bit about the Odyssey. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hearing people talk about the volume. It's just so darn loud. Is that the only criticism of this film?
Okay, so I have seen the Odyssey. I did not notice that it was too loud, but I will say that I actually shockingly did not see it in IMAX because I was unable to get a ticket, even though I've been reporting about people showing up in droves. I myself couldn't get a ticket to see it in IMAX, so I saw it in the boring standard version, but I loved the movie, and I have to say that I went on social media. I saw all these videos of people covering their ears, wearing earplugs, but Mike Callia, the head of the business unit here at NBC News, he reminded me that back when Saving Private Ryan came out, audiences at the time were saying that it was way too loud with the bullets whizzing and that, you know, people are always going to find something to criticize.
It's a big film, a very big film, and it's noisy, and I can't wait to see it.
They need to go see that and Spider-Man this weekend.
I know.
Both of them.
I will. Okay, Chloe Molas. Thank you, Chloe. Nice to see you. Have a great weekend. So how current are you? If you've been watching, we just clued you in on the answer to the question. Spider-Man Brand New Day scored the best domestic box office debut weekend in Hollywood history, taking the crown from what other Marvel film? The answer? Avengers Endgame. It opened to $357 million back in 2019, now dethroned by Tom Holland's Spider-Man movie, which opened to a whopping $360 million. If this was fun, you're going to want to download the NBC News app. You want to get the full quiz sent to your phone on Saturday morning. A good way to stay current. All right, coming up, we'll take you to a city in Maine where robots roam the streets. How they're helping people with disabilities get around more easily. It's part of our series, 50 States in 50 Days. And a dream decades in the making will show you the magical moment a young man received his Yale acceptance letter after overcoming incredible odds. We have more current after this. In our series, 50 States in 50 Days, we are introducing you to the people making a difference in their communities. Today, we're rolling into Maine, where robots are taken to the streets and the sidewalks to help improve accessibility. Ryan Bell from our Portland affiliate, WCSH, shows us how.
Robots rolling through Bangor. Not to take over the world yet. First, to check for ADA compliance.
I thought it looked like Wall-E.
The city is contracting with Oregon-based company DAXBot to assess about 150 miles of sidewalks and crosswalks.
The robot here is supposed to collect as much information as possible about the sidewalks themselves, including the state and the conditions of them, but mostly what areas are accessible or inaccessible for people with disabilities.
The idea of using the robots for this portion is to get a lot of the manpower done without us having to spend 2 summers in the field.
Bangor will pay about $95,000 for the data collected. Officials say that price tag is significantly lower than what it would cost to manually do the assessment, which is required by law.
To do this with humans would be at least double that in cost.
The robots ran into some roadblocks with cell signal during their rollout, but company leaders say the technology has been successfully used in more than a dozen other cities around the U.S.
We're wanting to come alongside people with robots, use them as tools, use them as helpers, not replacements, never replacements.
Data collection is expected to take 8 to 12 weeks. Residents learned about the process at the Bangor Public Library prior to their release.
Whatever to make life easier, and if it's for safety reasons, that's even better.
We've all predicted that someday there'd be robots running around, right? I guess it's happening.
Ryan Bell for NBC News Now.
Ryan Bell from our affiliate in Maine, thanks for that. And on today's Bright Side, we introduce you to a teenager whose family came to America looking for a better life. He took a job at a local Wendy's, but when he needed more money for college, he began searching for a new job. That is until his bosses stepped in to help. NBC Nightly News anchor Tom Yamas shows us what they had cooking up.
Watch as 23-year-old Thomas D'Souza's life is about to change. An acceptance letter to Yale University. A dream that once felt impossible.
It was always college. It has always been.
D'Souza escaped extreme violence in one of Rio de Janeiro's poorest neighborhoods. moving from Brazil to the U.S. 10 years ago.
I don't think a lot of people really saw potential in myself, and I don't think I saw potential in myself.
In high school, he learned English and worked full-time at a Wendy's in Cape Cod. He wanted to save for college, but the pay wasn't great, so he decided to pursue another job. But his bosses at Wendy's had another idea.
Continue working with us, and we will help you to go to college and pay for it.
For every hour D'Souza worked, they set aside extra money for him, a college scholarship fund.
It was a wonderful opportunity with a kid who has all the potential in the world.
With their help, he enrolled in community college and excelled. His sights set on Yale, so he applied, leading to this moment. Embraced by his mother and sister, and showered with champagne by his friends.
It changed the whole perspective of my life, and I think that's the point, right? It only takes one person to believe in you, and I am a living proof of that.
Tom Llamas, NBC News.
What a story. Thanks, Tom. And in the spirit of Friday, we wanted to leave you with a little musical mood booster. Sometimes all it takes to make you smile is hearing your favorite song. And it appears Baby Mateo would agree. Take a look at this adorable video captured by the baby monitor in his room. And let's just say the baby, this baby, he don't mess around.
Alexa, play Hey Ya. Hey Ya by Outkast from Apple Music.
1, 2, 3. My baby don't mess around because she loves me so, and this I know for sure.
Oh, Alexa. That's it for us this hour. We're grateful you joined us for our very first week of current NBC News Daily is next. But first, come on, it's Friday. We're going to leave you with more of those Friday feels.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.